What's going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets-Haber. We're going to be talking NFL Thursday slate. I almost said showdown because I'm just used to it, and it's early in the week to feel like we're doing a showdown, a full slate here, or a sort of full slate. But Sheets, we got an interesting little three-gamer. It's not the most beautiful football games we've ever seen in our lives, but let's make some money from DFS perspective. Any sort of overall thoughts on the slate?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second. You kind of stumbled into an interesting question without realizing it. Is that like how do you approach a slate like this? It's not exactly a showdown slate, and it's not exactly a full slate either. So you have the only time of the year where you have something between a showdown until the playoffs, still a showdown and a full slate. You have a 3-game slate, and you want to get a little bit kooky, but you don't want to get too kooky like a showdown slate. Mm-hmm. So are you still trying to find good correlative pretty looking lineups, or are you willing to be a little funkier? I mean, overall, like for me, the slate looks easy, and that means that it's going to be probably really chalky. At least my initial look at it. Like my initial look at it. Well, before I get into that, I mean, what do you think of that in general? Like, how are you treating the slate? More of a showdown slate, more of a real slate? Like, where are you?
I think if you can correlate, great. I don't think that I'm going to spend too much time trying to overdo that. I think getting the best plays is way to go. But I will try to give the little extra boost to the correlation at sort of treating it like I would maybe a 4 or 5 game NBA slate instead of a 13 gamer, which we get in NBA only a couple times a week at most, and NFL is all we have basically.
All right, so let's have fun. Let's just go game by game then. We'll see.
Yeah, why don't you pull up your screen? I'm going to grab a pen because I just left mine and I need to make my notes.
Yeah, you don't really need too much ink in the pen for the first game. So Chicago, Detroit. Like for me, what I have is the best overall running back play on the slate being David Montgomery. And then I have some secondary love of DeAndre Swift on the Detroit running side of the game. And aside from that, I really don't like any of the skill positions in this game at all. So as we'll get to, I just feel like just all the skill positions and all the scoring and all the fantasy points are going to come from the later 2 games, specifically the second game. And I don't have too much interest in it, and that's probably going to be a pretty chalky way to look at it. So certainly if you want to play guys like Moody and whoever else in Detroit, you could certainly get different in that way, but you're just giving up like a lot playing guys like that, I think, on this particular slate. I don't know. So for me, again, my at least first look is Montgomery, probably overall best running back anyway, and then maybe some Swift. And honestly, that's it.
I like Montgomery a lot. I think that he's, maybe one of the preferred guys at running back. And I really like Mooney if Robinson doesn't play again. And even if he does, I have some interest in Mooney. The only difference is it would bring in on a small slate a guy like Marquise Goodwin as a potential value play, or even Damiere Byrd, who they looked for a couple times deep. I mean, Marquise Goodwin just had, a 20 fantasy point game, and it's like people aren't noticing it. So I think as a value play, he's interesting. I think Mooney is interesting. Mooney's my favorite of the bunch. And then again, it's a small slate, so I would take some shots on guys. I mean, they tried a 50-yard bomb to Bird the other day, and it just didn't quite get there. I think it might have been a PI, it might have been a pass interference. By the way, always the most frustrating thing when you have your players and you get a giant 50-yard pass interference play because the defender has no chance, and it's just like, oh man, like, you know what I mean? Because you get no points for this. We should at least get like a 10th of a point per yard for pass interference, in my opinion. Anyway, it's really hard for me to find anything I really want to do on the Detroit side. I don't know, man. This feels like a play both defenses, but especially play the Bears defense. I think DeAndre Swift is like, it's consistent enough, and they look for him in between the passing game and the fact that he's just an absolute beast of a guy as a running back. He's really their offense. So there's obviously nothing wrong with playing DeAndre Swift here. Jamal Williams is, back in our lives as he was last week, but didn't stop Swift. So I think that Swift gets a little bit of a boost down because Jamal Williams is around again. I don't know, man. I'm looking at these receivers, and sure, somebody could get there, I guess, but it feels just really thin to play any of these receivers on the Detroit side, with the potential exception of Hawkinson, who could get a lot of work. So I guess it's just Hawkinson on the Detroit side for me. And then you have Mooney on the other side, Montgomery, and most of the big, and Goodwin as a long shot play, or as a value play, I should say. But I think the best play in this game is both defenses, especially the Bears.
So before we carry on, we're still not sure whether Goff is going to play or not. And it's kind of sad when nobody really cares whether it's Goff or Boyle. You know what I mean? It's pretty sad for Goff. You know what I mean? That they're like, well, I don't even care whether it's Goff or Boyle. It's the same thing. It is one thing that's very, very traditional about Thanksgiving is people betting on the games. So we would be remiss if we didn't at least give our spread picks for like all the games.
Let's do it.
And for me, it's easy. I mean, Detroit covers literally every game. They try every game.
Oh, okay.
With the exception of 2 or 3 games. I mean, look, every single game. I mean, last week they cover every game. So they just keep trying. Campbell might not have a lot of ammo.
They're only a 3.5 point dog, though. Not much room to cover.
I'm just saying that they put out the effort every single week, with the exception of that one game against Philadelphia where they didn't show up. But every other week they just show up, and so I'll just keep saying that they're good against the spread play. So I like Detroit against the spread, and yeah, the Bears defense, and I think the Lions defense, like you said, is in play as well. Who do you like? Do you like Chicago?
I like Chicago to cover, but I actually agree. I mean, I agree Detroit plays hard and all that stuff, but I think Chicago's just a better football team by a decent amount. I actually was surprised it was only 3.5. I thought it could have been 5 or so, even though I don't think they're like a great team, and obviously they're starting. It's going to be weird because now you've got Andy Dalton playing on 3 days rest, but he only played half the game, so maybe it's not so bad. I don't know. And you're right, Goff is not announced out yet. So if Goff's in, I actually think they have a better chance of staying in the game. It's like against an average backup, I would say that Goff it should be treated that way. But Tim Boyle is especially bad. He was not a good quarterback in college. Like, right. I don't know how he's in the NFL. He must be a really nice guy. I did just want to throw out one more guy because he's going to show up as a good play for tight ends, and that's Cole Kmet. And I just forgot to mention him. I wish I would have forgot about him last week, but I didn't, unfortunately, and I think Cole Kmet's a very solid play as well. So,
I mean, just for fun, I wanted to say, I want to just go through the Detroit games. I mean, again, just because. So the first week of the season, they were actually a 15-point underdog, and they were actually winning for a while. They lost San Francisco. Then
they were down by 30 though.
Right. They covered. Then it done against Green Bay. I presume they didn't cover 18, right?
No.
Then they were ahead with 19 seconds to go, and Tucker kicked a 60,000-yard field goal to beat them. Then at Chicago, I don't know what the spread was, but that's pretty close to the number. Then at Minnesota, they were winning at the end, and then Minnesota kicked a miracle field goal. Then it done against Cincinnati. They gave the Rams they threw in the kitchen sink against the Rams, and they covered that one. Then their one game I told you about against Philadelphia. They tied Pittsburgh on the road. They almost beat Cleveland on the road. You know what I mean? Like, not that they're any good. They're really bad, but they do put out effort, which is.
I like it. I'll go. I don't have a decidedly strong point of view on it. So if you're betting, take Sheets' side of this, because I actually agree with all the points you're making.
You want to move on to some greener pastures here?
Yeah. Why don't you start off the Vegas Dallas game?
So this is obvious. I mean, for me, there are 3 offenses on the slate. There's Vegas, Dallas, and Buffalo. For me, those are the 3 offenses on the slate, and 2 of them happen to be playing in the same game. So this is to me the easy game to stack up. You play Lamb, you play Diggs. I presume Cooper's out, but we'll see. You play Lamb, you play Diggs. You play Lamb, you play there was another guy I wanted to ask you about for Dallas.
Cedric Wilson.
Lamb, Gallup. There's a guy who showed up, Cedric Wilson. Dude, there's a guy that showed up when I was doing something for Evan today, where I was like doing like sample builds or whatever it is, and I threw a lineup, like stuff into SaberSim, and it popped out a lineup with the guy I'd literally never heard of for Dallas, and the name is so awesome that if he comes in, I just want to have one lineup with him. I don't know if he's played a single snap the whole season, but the guy's name is Simi Fehoko. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, literally, I don't think he's had a target like the whole season. If he's even played a snap. But if he's showing up because he's maybe moving up the depth chart, if these guys are out, if he's active wearing a uniform, I'm gonna put a lineup in it just in case Simi Fehako does something. All right, Fehoko.
Okay.
But look, Zeke is a really good play. On the other side of it, you got Josh Jacobs and Renfro and Waller and all the cast of characters. You can play Carr, you play Prescott, maybe Carr's the chalk because he's 5,900 and Prescott's a little less owned because he's 6,900. I don't think it matters. I think you can get to Prescott just as easily. So I think this is the game to roll with, and the game stacks both ways, and probably that's what a lot of people are going to do. But that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So the thing that's tricky here is we need to know about CeeDee Lamb before I can decide what to do here. Either way, I like Cedric Wilson and Michael Gallup.
Yeah.
Whether or not Lamb plays, I really like Cedric Wilson if Lamb doesn't play. But if Lamb does play, Cedric Wilson is not going to pop off the charts for anybody, and I'm going to play Cedric Wilson. 7 targets last week. He's pretty heavily involved, and obviously some of those were with Lamb out of the game. But as a third receiver, the Dallas does use their third receiver quite a bit, so I'm open to playing him anyway. I do think that Dak is going to be like the guy who a lot of people will play, in cash game lineups and whatnot. I personally would prefer the guy in the next game, but I think that I totally get it. Renfro, Edwards, Jackson, Zay Jones, what to do with this mess of characters? I think the simplest answer is Waller. And I think the one who I'm going to end up taking, just going back to, because he's been inconsistent, which is weird because he's a guy who should be like a possession receiver. But Brian Edwards, I think, is the guy. I'm probably going to play him at 3,900 as another value play. He's right there with me with the good win thing from Chicago.
Well, I'll tell you this: if you're going to play him on a 14 game slate, all right, and then you're not going to let him beat you on a Thanksgiving Day slate where he'll be just as low owned.
Right. If he does in fact end up just as low owned, then obviously it's going to be hard for me to ignore that. Yeah, right. And based on the projections, he probably will be. But I think you could. I mean, look, if you play he and Goodwin together, you can spend up at every other position. And I think Goodwin has got some upside as well. I think that the problem I have with Jacobs is on big slates is that, Drake just eats up so much of the usage. But on this slate, I think Jacobs is very much more in play. I'm probably going to be a little lower on Zeke than I'm guessing the field will be. But I have some interest. I still like the Dallas passing game, even no matter who's at receiver. I think it was an aberration what happened last week. I don't think it's going to be consistent. And I like both the tight ends for what it's worth in this game. I like both Schultz and Waller. I prefer Waller, but I think Schultz is reasonable if you want to go double tight end. So gonna have to wait to see what happens with CD. If he plays, I'm gonna play him. But I'm not in love with these Raiders crop of receivers, so I may as well take the cheaper one who's gonna be lower owned. And that's why I said Brian Edwards or even a Deshaun Jackson. Renfro is certainly logical, but I think I would rather play Waller with one of those guys than I would. And I don't think I'm gonna be using Derek Carr this week.
I mean, I'll just say this, that again, Zeke kind of limped off the field in the last game. He came back, but he's obviously not 100%. A couple of things about that. First of all, dude, if you're going to give me those 6 targets from him, like they did last week and a couple of weeks before that, you just know. First of all, they are a 7-point favorite, and as I said last week, and this, it didn't come to pass. I guess because of a weird game with Kansas City, but Dallas still would prefer to just run the ball. I mean, they just would, especially if Cooper's out. Like if they can get away with and if Lamb is out, if they can get away with pounding it with Zeke, they'll do it. They'll put it in his hands all day. So he does still have like a really big ceiling. But I will say this: is it a short enough slate?
Yes.
Where you can play Pollard?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
I wouldn't play Pollard over Montgomery, but if I might play a Pollard and Montgomery.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't think that he outscores him enough there, but I think that there's enough for both of them to be, decent running backs on kind of a weak slate. The reason I just think everybody's going to play Zeke, and I did see him as getting a little bit banged up, and Pollard is still a part of the offense. And if they're up, like just let's just say they're up by a couple scores and stuff. Don't you think they're going to maybe give Zeke a little bit of a break?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I think that's sort of the angle I'm going to try and take there. So I actually think Pollard is actually in play, but more than that, I think that Zeke is a better fade because of that in the ownership. Now Zeke very well may go off and is clearly the best running back on the slate, but I don't know if we need to do it.
What is your opinion on the game?
I think Dallas is. I'm surprised the totals is. I'm surprised that not the total. I'm surprised Dallas is expected to score as many points as they are. That they're expected to win by as many points as they are. It shouldn't. I didn't think it would be 7.5 with all these injuries for Dallas. I thought this would be like maybe a 4 to 6 game because of the injuries. So my natural inclination when a team gets over 7 is to say that the team is going to cover that. I also think Dallas is going to come out guns blazing at least the first few possessions and really try to put a hammer down after how bad their offense looked last week. And I don't think the Raiders have a good enough defense to really slow them down too much. So I'm very torn on the game. I think Dallas wins, but I certainly think Vegas to cover makes a little bit of sense. Even though I don't know if I wouldn't bet it. I would probably just lay on that one and use it as a money line in a parlay of some sort.
Yeah, for me, I would normally say that Vegas is sort of live in this spot, but there's just a lot going against them, man. I mean, playing the 4:00 game on Sunday and a short rest going into Dallas on the road, facing Dallas coming off of a pretty, I would say, a pretty bad loss, honestly.
Yeah.
They didn't play that well at all. They and not to be a narrative guy, but they've always played. It's always seemed to play well on Thanksgiving, and I think it's just a really tough spot for Vegas. And I feel as though that if unless Dallas loses, even if Dallas loses Lamb, it's like this seems like 7.5 is just asking you to just take Vegas and those freaking points, and I don't know. I just think it's a rough spot. So gun to my head, I'll just lay the 7.5 with Dallas and just, I'll rely on their defense being better than people think. And hey, you know what? They held Kansas City well enough,
Oh no, absolutely.
And it was just their offense that just couldn't really do anything. And I'd like to think that they're gonna bounce back from that. So I like Dallas on the against the spread in this game.
All right, I can get behind that. I just don't have a strong take. I do have a strong take in this next one.
Okay.
I think Buffalo is. I mean, it makes me nervous to say because I've been preaching all year about how New Orleans is better, especially at home, than people think, and they looked terrible last week. So did Buffalo. But I think 4 points is too little. I think Buffalo wins this game and covers, and I like every part of the Buffalo in this situation.
Against the spread, I would just like to say that I hope you're right because I think I'm going to have Buffalo in one of my Survivor big ones. So, like I said, you have no choice in this one of these pools. You have to take a team on Thanksgiving, and we set it up to have one entry fading Dallas this week. So we already burned Dallas. So Buffalo's just the next best option for us. Mm-hmm. So this is what we kind of thought that Buffalo would be the second biggest favorite and nobody was going to own them. And everybody burned Buffalo over the last like 6 or 7 weeks. So we have Buffalo against very other few people on them. So I hope you're right. I really don't have much of an opinion outside of that. Buffalo, you could really make the case that Buffalo is a colossal fraud if you wanted to. I mean, you could look at their wins. They aside from the Kansas City win, they've had like wins against Miami and the Jets pretty much. I mean, that's really like the only teams they beat. But I do agree with you. I think Buffalo coming off of that last game, I think that they're gonna. I don't know. I just think they're gonna be better. I think that last time they had a miserable game against Jacksonville, they came back the next week and put a hammer on the Jets. And after last week, they just ran into a freaking buzzsaw. They didn't expect it. You picture your Buffalo, right? Like, all right, we had a bad game with Jacksonville. We just took care of business against the Jets. Now we're home. Indianapolis is coming in. We're at no big deal. And next thing you know, you got the freaking Wisconsin freight train running over them. You know what I mean? And but okay, maybe there is parity in this world, you know, and I think they're going to be up for this game. I think that they're going to, you know, Diggs is going to have a good game. I think that, you know, Josh Allen's going to have a good game. Now, look, it's not the greatest matchup in the world. All you can hope, I guess, is that the Lattimore thing will keep Diggs' ownership down, which it won't. I mean, Diggs is still going to be really popular, but I'm going to play him. And the other thing about, I think that the tight end from Buffalo is back, that being Knox.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of sneaky in play also. Maybe not even sneaky, but I think that he's in play. And I, you know, I know that Kamara is probably back playing. I don't know. Is that actually happening? Was it non-participant Monday? Wow.
It's a very, very thin.
That's a fishy questionable. And I actually kind of hope that he plays so I can fade him.
I don't even know if that's a bold fade though.
I don't know, but that's the thing. I mean, like, well, look, I mean, we faded Jonathan Taylor because I was afraid of the Buffalo defense, and God knows how much equity we lost because of that. But I'll go right back to the fact that Buffalo's a good defense, and I think that Buffalo's got a lot of pride, and they're gonna, you know, if Kamara, whoever's playing for New Orleans, I think their Buffalo defense can be a really, really strong game. I will say that I do kind of lean the under as a result of everything I just said. I don't see where New Orleans is really scoring in this game. That's my thing. And I think New Orleans defense might be just good enough to keep Buffalo from really just putting up a lot of points. So I'm kind of into like a, you know, in a best case scenario for Buffalo, like a 27-10, you know, something like that. And in a worst case scenario for Buffalo, maybe they lose 17-14 or something like that. I don't really see variations where this game shoots out, honestly.
It's hard for me to see it too, because Buffalo, I mean, I still believe in their defense because they had a bad week, you know. Even when they've struggled this year, it's not generally been, their defense has been all that bad. Also, they've been a lot of weather games and weird stuff. I am going to be all over the Buffalo passing game. I'm going to have every piece of it all the way down to Gabriel Davis, the fourth receiver. Nice. I mean, I want all different parts. The problem I have this week, and I might have to revisit my Zeke thoughts because I haven't tried to do my builds. I was just going through the plays that I liked. That there's a lot of good potential value, and there's very little that you want to spend up on, which sort of touches on your, you know what, Kamara probably does get pretty highly owned if he plays, because it's very easy to play Kamara and Zeke at running back and be fine everywhere else. Right. So I actually think it's going to be hard not to play Zeke unless you want to leave a lot of money on the table, which I don't necessarily think is optimal. You're also going to be able to play CD pretty easily if you want to. I mean, he's really cheap anyway, actually, for CD.
Well, it's a Thanksgiving slate anyway. I mean, they always make it so you can play whoever you want.
Yeah. So just, but with that in mind, I do like all of these secondary Buffalo receivers. Beasley is, you know, losing some, not even snaps, she's losing some targets to Davis. But you know how I feel about Lattimore defensively is really strong. I still think it's worth it to probably play Diggs, but usually on a full slate, I don't like double stacking Josh Allen. I think it's always a mistake pretty much because there's usually one receiver going to go off for their prices, but this is a small slate. So I think Josh Allen to either Diggs and Sanders, Diggs and Beasley, Diggs and Davis, maybe even some other variations of that. I think that's going to be my main focus. And I want to run it back. So I think Tre'Quan Smith is my favorite play on the New Orleans side because he probably won't be the one who matches up with Tre'Davious White. I need to do a little more digging on that. And if not for him, I would, you know, Callaway and Harris both make sense to me as well. But this is the game I'll have the most interest in this week, and filtering in some pieces from the other ones. And just a quick little recap of my thing. My main thing is going to be the Buffalo stack. No running backs, but the stack of that. I like the Dawson Knox idea. I think this is a reasonable week to go double tight end with Waller and one of Knox or Hawkinson or there was one more I had. Dalton Schultz. I think all those, that's a very viable route because we have a lot of thin-ish receivers. But my favorite plays, I like Montgomery, I like Mooney, and then I like the Buffalo passing game, and I like the Dallas passing game. But I probably am going to leave Dak out of my Dallas stack. So I'll probably play, you know, Josh Allen with. I might even play two receivers from Dallas and two from Buffalo, or one of them being a tight end from Dallas or something like that. Those are the offenses I want to focus on, and not worry as much about the run backs, with the exception of I do like Tre'Quan Smith a little bit and Deontay Harris. And on the Raiders side, I don't know if we need to play Bryan Edwards, but I think I'll just probably stick with the Waller side of things.
I'm probably not going to play a share of a New Orleans skill position guy. As a matter of fact, I feel as though the Buffalo defense is very strong. And in a weird way, the New Orleans defense is as well. I mean, Josh Allen, he's been throwing the ball. You know, he's been fumbling it a little bit. He's been throwing some picks. I just remember that Jacksonville game still. I don't know what happened last week, but as far as interceptions go, but I think they're in play. I don't want to play the Vegas defense, but I certainly can play the Dallas defense. And I'm just thinking about defense. Defense, I could literally play 4 of them. You know, I don't want to play New Orleans. Excuse me. I guess I can play 5 of them. I just don't want to play Vegas. That's the one defense I really don't want to play. So I'm probably gonna have no skill position guys.
Don't play New Orleans.
What's that?
Don't play the New Orleans defense.
I would play the New Orleans defense.
I wouldn't do it, but go ahead. I mean, Buffalo just doesn't usually make mistakes that much, but okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would play the only Chicago skill position guy I'm probably going to end up with is what's his name? Is Montgomery. The only Detroit skill position guy I'm going to end up with is probably none of them. Actually, maybe Swift. Okay.
Yes,
Maybe Swift. And then all the skill position guys are really, for me, going to come from Buffalo, Vegas, and Dallas. I'm not going to play any skill position guys.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, well, it should be a fun slate. I'm excited. A fun little Thanksgiving. You know, hopefully can find a way to take one down. I don't think we're gonna be able to do anything live or anything those days or anything like that. But I would say good luck to everybody out there. And if there's any questions, I'll be in Discord, or thought you'd be in Discord. I'm sure me and Rody will be chopping it up with you guys.
Hey, I got a question. Is there Thanksgiving basketball? I forget.
There never usually is. I didn't even look this year.
Okay. All right, sounds good. We'll see you guys at 6.
All right, good luck, everybody.
All right, later.